The air in the family room was thick with the scent of my mother's lavender candles, but it couldn't mask the betrayal that choked me. I stood there, 35 years old, staring at the check in my brother's hand. $500,000, crisp and gleaming like a knife. "Be grateful, Ellie," my father said, his voice cold, as if I hadn't spent a decade keeping this family together while Ethan partied his way through life. I'd always been the one to step up. When Mom's cancer hit, I was 25, fresh out of college, and I dropped everything to manage her appointments, cook meals, and keep the house from falling apart. Ethan, 3 years my senior, was too busy chasing women and blowing his trust fund on sports cars to notice. I didn't complain. Not when I missed job opportunities. Not when I spent sleepless nights balancing Dad's failing hardware store accounts. Not even when I buried my own dreams to hold us together. But now, standing in that room, watching my parents hand Ethan the money from the sale of our family's lake house, the one I'd spent my summers restoring with Grandpa, I felt something snap. "Grateful," I whispered, my voice trembling. "For what?" "For being your maid while Ethan gets a fortune." Mom's face softened, but her words cut deeper. "Ellie, he's starting a business. He needs this. You're stable. You don't need it like he does." Stable. The word burned. Stable meant invisible. Stable meant my sacrifices were expected, unremarkable. Ethan smirked, folding the check into his pocket like it was pocket change. "Come on, sis," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Don't make a scene. You've got your little job, right?" My little job. I'd clawed my way to a mid-level marketing position, scraping by on a salary that barely covered my rent after I'd paid off Mom's medical bills. Meanwhile, Ethan's business was a vague plan for a crypto startup, built on nothing but his charm and a history of failed ventures. I looked at my parents, searching for a flicker of fairness, but their eyes were fixed on their golden boy. I wasn't their daughter in that moment. I was their servant. I turned and walked out. Not a word, not a glance back. The front door slammed behind me, the sound echoing like a gunshot in my chest. I drove to my tiny apartment, my hands shaking on the wheel, and that's when I remembered the deed. The lake house deed, tucked in Grandpa's old safe, the one he'd left in my name after he died. He'd whispered to me that summer, his voice frail but firm, "Ellie, this is yours. You love this place like I do. Protect it." My parents didn't know. Ethan didn't know. And now, with that check in his pocket, they'd never know what hit them. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch, the deed in my hands, its weathered edges a testament to Grandpa's trust in me. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to beg for scraps anymore. I packed a bag, called my boss to take an indefinite leave, and drove north. The lake house was 6 hours away, nestled in the pines of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. A sanctuary of cedar and memories. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. My phone buzzed with texts from Mom. "Ellie, don't be dramatic," and Ethan, "You're overreacting as usual." But I turned it off. Let them think I was sulking. Let them think I'd come crawling back. The lake house smelled of pine and thyme, its wooden floors creaking under my steps. I dropped my bag and walked to the porch, where the water lapped gently against the shore. This was my place, my legacy, not some cash cow for Ethan's schemes. But as I stood there, the weight of what I'd done, and what I was about to do, settled in. I wasn't just running. I was declaring war. I spent the first week cleaning, scrubbing years of dust from the windows, polishing the oak table where Grandpa taught me to play chess. I found his old journals, filled with stories of the house, of his dreams for it to be a haven for family. Family. The word stung now. But as I read, I found something else. A letter, tucked in the back, addressed to me. "Ellie," it read. "This house is more than wood and nails. It's your strength. If they ever try to take it, fight. You're tougher than they know." Grandpa's words lit a fire in me. I wasn't going to let Ethan or my parents sell my birthright. But I needed a plan. Something to hit them where it hurt. Something to make them see me. I started digging into the legalities of the deed. It was ironclad. Grandpa had made sure of that. The house was mine, free and clear, and they couldn't touch it. But the $500,000? That was from the sale of the adjacent land. Land I hadn't known they'd sold until that check appeared. They'd gone behind my back, assuming I'd roll over like always. I called a lawyer, a friend from college who'd moved to a firm in Traverse City. "Ellie," she said, her voice sharp with excitement. "If you've got the deed, you've got leverage, but you need to act fast. If they're moving money like that, they might try to challenge you." She agreed to help pro bono because she knew my family's history and believed in my fight. We started drafting letters, pulling records, building a case. I wasn't just protecting the house. I was rewriting the story they'd forced on me. By the end of the week, I had a plan. I'd vanish, yes, but not forever. I'd make them sweat, make them wonder where I'd gone, and then I'd come back with the deed and a demand. The money they'd given Ethan belonged to the house, to me, to Grandpa's legacy. And if they didn't agree, I'd drag them through court until they had nothing left but regret. As the sun set over the lake, painting the water gold, I felt a strange calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't Ellie the doormat, Ellie the afterthought. I was Ellie the fighter, and I was just getting started. The lake house became my fortress, its walls shielding me from the chaos I'd left behind. I woke each morning to the sound of loons on the water, their calls a reminder that I was free, at least for now. But freedom came with a cost. Every creak of the floorboards echoed with the weight of what I was planning, a reckoning that could either save me or break us all. I spent my days digging deeper into the family's finances. My lawyer friend, Sarah, sent me scans of public records, and what I found made my blood boil. The land sale wasn't just a quick deal, it was a calculated move. My parents had sold the lakefront parcel to a developer for $750,000, not $500,000. The extra $250,000? Tucked away in a trust for Ethan's future ventures. With my parents as trustees, they hadn't just favored him. They'd built an empire for him on my back. I called Sarah, my voice shaking with rage. "They lied to me, Sarah. They sold Grandpa's land and didn't even tell me." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Ellie, this is fraud territory. If you can prove you were entitled to that land, we can sue for misrepresentation and breach of fiduciary duty." Her words were a lifeline, but they also terrified me. Suing my family meant torching whatever was left of us. Still, I told her to start drafting the complaint. I wasn't ready to file yet, but I needed ammunition. Meanwhile, my phone stayed off, but I checked my email through a VPN to stay invisible. Mom's messages were a mix of guilt trips and pleas. "Ellie, we're worried. Come home and talk." Ethan's were uglier. "You're being selfish. This is why no one trusts you with big decisions." I deleted them all. They didn't get to rewrite the narrative anymore. I started reaching out to old family friends, people who'd known Grandpa and might have insight into the land deal. One of them, Mrs. Callahan, a neighbor from the lake, invited me over for coffee. She was in her 70s, sharp as ever, and her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Ellie, your grandpa would be proud of you standing your ground," she said, pouring me a cup. She told me she'd overheard my parents talking to the developer last summer, planning the sale while I was back in Detroit, oblivious. "They thought you'd never fight back," she said. "They underestimated you." Her words fueled me, but they also hurt. How had I let it come to this? How had I let them treat me like a footnote in my own family? I drove back to the lake house, my mind racing. That night, I found another of Grandpa's journals, this one detailing the history of the land. He'd bought it in the 1960s, piece by piece, with every penny he earned from his carpentry business. He'd meant it for all of us, but he'd put the house in my name because he saw me, really saw me, in a way my parents never did. I started mapping out my next move. Sarah suggested I hire a private investigator to track the money trail, but I didn't have the funds. Instead, I leaned on my own resourcefulness. I combed through public records online, piecing together the developer's history. They were a shady outfit, known for flipping properties and dodging taxes. If I could link their deal to any misconduct, I might have leverage to demand the full $750,000 back, or at least enough to make Ethan and my parents squirm. By the end of the second week, I'd built a dossier, emails, contracts, even a recorded voicemail from the developer's office that Sarah had managed to get through a contact. It wasn't airtight, but it was enough to scare my family into negotiating. I drafted a letter, cold and professional, addressed to my parents and Ethan. "I have the deed to the lake house," I wrote. "I know about the $750,000. Return the money to the family estate, or I'll see you in court." I didn't send it yet. I wanted them to stew a little longer. The lake house was changing me. I wasn't just hiding, I was rebuilding. I started running along the shore each morning, the crisp air clearing my head. I fixed the dock, hammering nails with a fury that felt like defiance. This place was mine and I wasn't letting go. But late at night, when the house was quiet, doubts crept in. What if I lost? What if they fought dirty, turned the family against me? I pushed the thoughts away, focusing on Grandpa's letter. "You're tougher than they know." On day 14, Sarah called with news. "Ellie, the developer's in trouble. There's a lawsuit against them for environmental violations on another project. If we tie their lakefront deal to this, we might force a settlement." My heart raced. This was my chance. I told her to draft a demand letter to the developer, copying my parents. I wasn't just fighting for the money now, I was fighting for justice, for Grandpa, for me. As I hung up, I looked out at the lake, its surface shimmering under the moon. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was a force, and they were about to learn what happened when you underestimated Ellie Harper. The lake house was my sanctuary, but it was also my war room. I'd turned the dining table into a command center, covered with legal pads, printed emails, and Grandpa's journals. Every day, I felt stronger, but the weight of what I was doing, tearing my family apart, gnawed at me. Still, I couldn't stop. Not now. Sarah's demand letter to the developer went out on day 15, with a copy sent to my parents' address. I didn't expect a response right away, but I underestimated how fast things would escalate. 2 days later, my phone, finally turned on for a brief check, lit up with a voicemail from Dad. His voice was low, furious. "Ellie, what the hell are you doing? You're dragging us into a lawsuit? Come home and talk like an adult." I deleted it, but my hands shook. This was real now. No going back. I called Sarah. "They're rattled," she said, almost gleeful. "The developer's nervous too. They don't want another lawsuit. We've got them on the ropes." She suggested we push harder, demanding not just the $750,000 but damages for emotional distress. "You've got a case, Ellie. They excluded you from a family asset. That's not just unfair. It's illegal." I hesitated. Suing for damages felt like crossing a line, like admitting we'd never be a family again. But then I remembered Ethan's smirk, Mom's dismissal, Dad's cold, "Be grateful." I told Sarah to go for it. I needed air, so I walked to the lake's edge, the deed tucked in my jacket. The water was still, reflecting the pines like a mirror. I thought of Grandpa, his calloused hands teaching me to fish, his stories about building this place for us. He'd trusted me to protect it, and I was, but at what cost? I sat on the dock, letting the cold seep into my bones, and cried for the first time since I'd left. Not for them, for me, for the girl who'd given everything and gotten nothing. Back inside, I found an email from Mrs. Callahan. She dug up an old survey map of the lakefront land, showing it was tied to the house in ways my parents hadn't disclosed. The map suggested the land wasn't fully theirs to sell without my consent, as the deed holder. This was dynamite. I forwarded it to Sarah, who called me immediately. "Ellie, this changes everything. We can argue the sale was invalid. You could get the land back, not just the money." My heart pounded. The land back? The lake house whole again? Felt too big, too good. But Ethan wasn't done. A day later, a letter arrived at the lake house, forwarded from my apartment. It was from him, handwritten, which was rare. Ellie, it read, "You're tearing us apart. Mom's crying every night. Dad's a wreck. I know I haven't been perfect, but this lawsuit is cruel. Come home. We can work this out." I stared at the words, my chest tight. Was he sincere, or was this another manipulation? I didn't trust him. I crumpled the letter and threw it in the fire. Sarah and I spent the next few days tightening our case. The developer's lawyer reached out, offering a meeting. They were spooked, willing to negotiate to avoid another public scandal. I agreed to meet, but only with Sarah present and only on my terms, neutral ground, a law office in Traverse City. I wasn't walking into a trap. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep. I paced the lake house, Grandpa's journals open on the table. One entry caught my eye. "Family isn't just blood. It's who fights for you." I realized then that Grandpa had been my family, more than my parents or Ethan ever were. He'd seen my strength when I was just a kid, and now I was proving him right. The meeting was tense. The developer's lawyer, a slick man in a suit, tried to downplay the sale, claiming it was all above board. Sarah shut him down, laying out the survey map and my deed. My parents weren't there, Ethan either, but their lawyer was, a nervous woman who kept glancing at her phone. By the end, the developer offered $300,000 to settle. Sarah laughed. "Try again," she said. "We're not here for pocket change." Driving back to the lake house, I felt a rush of power. They were scared of me, but that night my phone buzzed again. It was Mom, a text this time. "Ellie, please, we made a mistake. Let's talk." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me knew better. I didn't respond. Instead, I poured a glass of wine and sat on the porch, the lake stretching out before me. I was winning, but it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. The lake house was starting to feel like home again, but the fight was far from over. The developer's $300,000 offer was a joke, and Sarah was already drafting a counter, demanding the full $750,000 plus legal fees. I was learning to think like a warrior, not a daughter, but every step forward felt like a step away from the family I'd once loved. Mom's text haunted me. I hadn't replied, but I couldn't delete it either. Her words, "We made a mistake," looped in my mind, tempting me to soften. I wanted to believe they could change, but I'd been burned too many times. Ethan's letter, Mom's tears, Dad's anger. It all felt like a playbook to pull me back into line. I wasn't falling for it. Sarah called with an update. "The developer's sweating," she said. "They're facing another lawsuit, and your case could tip them over. They're hinting at $500,000 now, but I think we can push for more." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "What about my parents?" I asked. She hesitated. "Their lawyer's trying to mediate, but they're not budging on Ethan keeping the money. They're calling it a family decision." Family decision. The phrase made me laugh, bitter and sharp. I wasn't part of that family anymore, not in their eyes. I told Sarah to keep pushing, to make it clear we'd go to court if needed. She warned me it could get ugly. Public records, depositions, Ethan's dirty laundry aired for all to see. I didn't care. Let it burn. I started reaching out to the community around the lake, people who'd known Grandpa and respected his legacy. They rallied around me, sharing stories of his generosity, his love for the land. One neighbor, Tom, a retired surveyor, offered to testify about the property lines, confirming the survey map Mrs. Callahan had found. Another, Lila, brought me a box of old photos. Grandpa and me, painting the dock, laughing under the summer sun. "He'd be proud of you, Ellie," she said. "Don't let them take this from you." The support gave me strength, but it also deepened my resolve. This wasn't just about money, it was about honoring Grandpa, about reclaiming my place. I spent hours drafting a letter to my parents, not the legal one Sarah was handling, but a personal one. I poured out everything. The years of sacrifice, the pain of being invisible, the betrayal of the land sale. You chose Ethan over me, I wrote. But I'm choosing myself now. I didn't send it. It was for me, a way to release the hurt I'd carried too long. Then Ethan showed up. I was on the porch, sipping coffee, when his car roared into the driveway, kicking up gravel. He stormed out, his face red, his designer jacket out of place in the wild. "Ellie, what the fuck?" he shouted, striding toward me. "You're suing us? You're destroying Mom and Dad." I stood, the deed in my pocket, my heart pounding but steady. "You destroyed us first," I said. "You took everything and left me nothing." He laughed, a cruel sound. "You're jealous. You've always been jealous. You think you're some martyr, but you're just pathetic." His words stung, but I didn't flinch. "Get off my property," I said, my voice low. He froze, his eyes narrowing. "Your property? You're delusional. This is Mom and Dad's." I cut him off, pulling the deed from my pocket. "It's mine, Ethan. Grandpa made sure of it. And I'm not giving it up." He stared, his bravado cracking. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He backed away, muttering threats, but he left. I stood there, shaking, the deed clutched tight. I'd won that round, but I knew he'd be back, and he wouldn't come alone. Sarah called that night. "The developer's up to $600,000, she said. "They're desperate, but your parents are digging in, claiming you're unstable, trying to discredit you." I wasn't surprised. They'd always rewritten my story to suit them, but I was done being their scapegoat. I spent the next day fortifying my position. I met with Tom, who confirmed the survey map's accuracy, and Lila, who connected me with a local reporter interested in the developer's shady deals. If my family wanted a fight, I'd make it public. I wasn't just protecting the lake house. I was exposing their lies, for Grandpa, for me, for everyone they'd ever dismissed. As the sun set, I sat on the dock, the water calm, the deed safe in the house. I wasn't the girl who'd walked out of that family room a month ago. I was someone new, someone who fought back. And I was ready for whatever came next. The air was colder now, the lake's edge fringed with frost. I'd been at the lake house for a month, and the fight was reaching a boiling point. The developer's offer had climbed to $650,000, but Sarah and I held firm for the full $750,000 plus damages. My parents, through their lawyer, were pushing back, painting me as the villain, a greedy daughter tearing the family apart. But I wasn't backing down. Ethan's visit had shaken me, but it also clarified things. He wasn't sorry, he was scared. Scared I'd win. Scared I'd expose him. I started hearing whispers from mutual friends. Ethan was telling everyone I'd lost it, that I was holding the family hostage over a worthless cabin. Worthless. The word made me laugh. This place was everything, my past, my strength, my future. Sarah called with a bombshell. "Ellie, we've got them." The developer's internal emails leaked. Someone on their team sent me a tip. They knew the land sale needed your approval and pushed it through anyway, bribing a local official to fudge the paperwork. My heart raced. This wasn't just leverage. It was a sledgehammer. "What do we do?" I asked. Sarah's voice was steely. "We threaten to go public. The developer will fold, and your parents will have no choice but to settle." I agreed, but I needed to see Ethan and my parents face to face. Not to reconcile, to confront. I told Sarah to set up a meeting, this time at the lake house. My turf, my rules. She sent out the invites, framing it as a chance to resolve things amicably. I knew they'd come. They had too much to lose. The day of the meeting, I cleaned the house until it gleamed, every surface a testament to my love for this place. I set out Grandpa's journals on the table, a silent reminder of whose side he'd been on. When their car pulled up, Mom, Dad, Ethan, and their lawyer. I stood on the porch, the deed in my hand, my heart steady. Mom looked older, her eyes red. Dad's jaw was tight, his anger barely contained. Ethan wouldn't meet my gaze. Their lawyer, A woman named Claire. Started with pleasantries, but I cut her off. You sold land that wasn't yours, I said, my voice calm but firm. You lied to me, excluded me, and gave Ethan everything. I have proof, the survey map, the developer's emails, the deed. This ends now. Claire blanched. Mom started to cry, but Dad exploded. You ungrateful little. I held up a hand. Don't. You don't get to lecture me anymore. I want the $750,000 back in the family estate, or I go public with everything. The developer's done. You're done. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low. Ellie, you're ruining us. Why can't you just let this go? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy who'd always taken, never given. Because I'm done letting you win, I said. Claire tried to negotiate, offering $700,000 to settle quietly. I shook my head. Full amount or we go to court. Mom sobbed. Ellie, please, we're family. I wanted to scream, to ask where that family was when I was drowning in their mess. But I stayed calm. Family doesn't betray family, I said. You did. They left without agreeing, but I knew they were rattled. Sarah called that night ecstatic. The developer's caving. They're offering $800,000 to avoid a lawsuit. Your parents are freaking out. They know they're cornered. I felt a surge of triumph, but it was bittersweet. I'd won the battle, but the war was still on. That night, I walked to the lake, the stars bright above. I thought of Grandpa, of his faith in me. I wasn't just fighting for the money or the house. I was fighting for the girl who'd been invisible too long, and I was close, so close to making them see her. The developer folded 2 days later, agreeing to $800,000 to settle out of court. Sarah called it a victory, but it felt hollow. The money would go into an escrow account until the family dispute was resolved. But my parents and Ethan were still fighting, clinging to their narrative that I was the problem. I wasn't done yet. I wanted them to admit what they'd done, not just pay for it. I started preparing for the next phase, a public reckoning. The local reporter, Mia, was eager to run a story on the developer's shady deal and my family's role in it. I gave her everything, the survey map, the leaked emails, even Grandpa's journals for context. This is big, Ellie, she said. It's not just about you. It's about holding people accountable. I nodded, but my stomach churned. Exposing them meant exposing me, too. My pain, my family's dysfunction, laid bare for the world. The day the story broke, my phone exploded. Friends, neighbors, even distant cousins reached out, some supportive, some horrified. Ethan called, screaming, "You've ruined us. Mom's in the hospital." My heart stopped. Hospital? I called Sarah, who checked with a contact. "She's fine," Sarah said. "Stress, maybe, but they're milking it for sympathy." I felt a mix of relief and disgust. They were still playing games. I drove to the hospital anyway, the deed in my bag, my resolve wavering. Mom was in a private room, pale but stable. Dad was there, his face a mask of exhaustion. Ethan stood in the corner, glaring. "Happy now?" he spat. I ignored him, looking at Mom. "I didn't want this," I said softly. "I just wanted to be seen." She reached for my hand, her eyes wet. "Ellie, we didn't mean to hurt you." But Dad cut in, his voice hard. "You did this, Ellie. You pushed too far." I pulled my hand back. "No, Dad. You did. You chose Ethan over me, over Grandpa's wishes. This is on you." I left before they could respond. My heart heavy, but my path clear. Back at the lake house, I met with Mia again. The story had gone viral locally, and the developer was facing new scrutiny. My parents' lawyer reached out, begging for a settlement. I agreed to talk, but only if they admitted their mistake in writing. A public apology, published alongside Mia's next article. They resisted, but the pressure was too much. A week later, I got the letter. It was short, formal, but there it was. "We acknowledge our error in excluding Ellie from the land sale and apologize for the pain caused." It wasn't heartfelt, but it was enough. Sarah finalized the settlement, $750,000 back to the family estate, with me as the sole trustee. The lake house, the land, everything was mine to protect. I should have felt triumphant, but I felt empty. I'd won, but at what cost? My family was fractured, maybe beyond repair. I sat on the porch, the deed in my lap, and thought of Grandpa. Fight, he'd said. But now I had to live with the aftermath. The lake house was quiet now, the fight over but the scars still fresh. The $750,000 was in the estate, under my control, and the deed was safe, locked in a new safe I'd bought. The land was mine again, whole as Grandpa had intended. But as I walked the shore, the victory felt more like survival than triumph. I started rebuilding not just the house but myself. I used some of the money to restore the lakefront, planting trees to replace what the developer had cleared. I turned the house into a retreat, a place for artists and writers to come and find peace, just as Grandpa had dreamed. I called it the Harper Haven, his name etched on a plaque by the door. Every nail I hammered, every wall I painted, felt like a step toward healing. My parents reached out a few times, tentative emails and calls, but I kept my distance. Their apology was a start, but trust was a long road. Ethan was the hardest. He'd lost his startup dreams, his reputation bruised by the public story. Part of me felt sorry for him. He was my brother, after all. But I couldn't forgive yet, not when he'd never truly apologized. One evening, Lila stopped by with a casserole and a smile. "You did it, Ellie," she said. "You fought for what's right." I nodded, but my eyes were on the lake, its surface catching the last light of day. "I just wish it didn't cost so much," I said. She squeezed my shoulder. "Sometimes standing up costs everything. But look at you, you're still here." And for the first time I felt like I belonged. Not to my parents, not to Ethan, but to myself. I'd vanished to find my strength, and I'd come back with more than a deed. I'd come back with my voice. Months later, the retreat opened. Guests arrived, their laughter filling the house. I stood on the porch, watching the lake, and felt Grandpa's presence. "You're tougher than they know," he'd said. And I'd keep fighting, not for revenge, but for the life I deserved.